Hello, this is Lisa Lee, and welcome to this week's enrichment reading. We are going to be looking at some really, I don't want to say tough questions. I think they're just really important questions. When we come to spirituality, we are looking for something. when we look for spiritual communion and community, we're looking for support. We're looking for a place to have that conversation, to allow that belief systems to be nurtured. We're looking for encouragement. You know, when we come to spirituality or religion or any practice that is like of that nature, we're often looking for deliverance. We're looking for healing. And so often it doesn't pay off. So often it doesn't deliver. And we see that in all major religions, where there are people that come to that church or go to that cult, and with all of their hope in the world and with all of the belief in the world, and it doesn't cure their sickness. It doesn't relieve their financial constraints. It doesn't open the door to the kind of relationship that's going to really be meaningful for them in their life. So many times, spirituality and the promise of a belief system does not deliver. And so when we sit down to this reading, when we enter this space, we're going to the divine, and we're kind of speaking to this, like very specifically. Like this week I was conversing with one particular guide, the guide we're going to be working with tonight. And I was like deep in concentrated conversation with this energy, and I just kept on saying, like, if I can't heal, if I can't transform, if I don't have the means for the generosity to help create something that can hold, then what am I doing? Like, why am I, if so much of my time is spent doing spiritual work in private, and I'm here publicly, but like the spiritual work that I do most prominently is actually like either work with people one-on-one or work with the divine in a very powerful way. But if that isn't shared, if that's not effective, then like, why are we even here? Like, are we spinning our wheels? Do spiritual questions just lead us into like circles? Or do we ever arrive at some sense of like a place of where that faith is operational, and that faith does in fact move mountains? And so as I sit down here, I want to sort of bring us to this point that faith does move mountains. It's important for us to look at something like the placebo effect and see that when the belief is operational, it has the ability to heal. But what we have to confront is this notion that, why is the belief not accessible to you right in this moment, or to somebody that you care about right in this moment as they enter into a tough situation, or as a situation that they're in is untenable or unlivable? The placebo effect works except when you're sick and you can't heal yourself. And you can know intellectually, you can believe as hard as you want, and still it's not necessarily going to transform your circumstances. And so then this kind of nightmare scenario comes in, where you're trying your hardest, you're putting your heart into it, you're having all this faith, and it's just causing strain, right? So as we enter into this reading, I kind of want to speak to this notion of the empty promises that spirituality and religion will often offer you and not be able to deliver on, but what that means juxtaposition to this notion of, sorry, that word is funny, I just couldn't say it. When we think about the reality of a belief system, a relationship with the deity that does not deliver on healing you, where that prayer does not get answered in terms of delivering or saving you in that moment that it was needed most of all. When we can look at that against this notion of something like a technology of faith, like the placebo effect, where if the person believes that the pill works, then it works. If the person believes that the God is the God, then that God is able to operate in that belief. That belief is permission. Like, we can know these things, but feel failed by them, or feel failed by people who don't know how to perfectly do it or can't do it reliably. And so let's go into this, because the notion that these two things exist as simultaneous causes us to need to bring in the question. And so the reason I've got some cards out is I always sit down to these readings and I do prayer meditation and I bring out the cards and, you know, I get the message, not the same message, but I get some variation on like what to expect, you know, most of the time. And sometimes I'll take notes and I'll take the cards off, but every once in a while I'll leave the cards out. And this is one of those times when I want to leave the cards out as like sort of the beginning, middle, and end, and the topic. Because this really is about this orphan and this way in which we come into the world, and we come into the world with all this expectation and all this hope, and we come into the world with a set of needs that nature is supposed to meet those needs, because nature meets those needs for the chicken, the duck, the bear, and the sheep, right? Nature meets those needs for the grass, the trees, the butterflies, and the bees. And so we have an expectation that we come into the world and that the nature, the goddess, is going to meet these needs. And sometimes not all of our needs are met. And sometimes we can see that some people get all of their needs met or most of their needs met, and other people don't get any of their needs met. And so that's kind of a conundrum. But the expectation is that those needs will be met. And then we're given all sorts of infrastructure and all sorts of indoctrination along the lines of the universe, the country, the church, the government is here to, you know, shepherd you along, to facilitate your growth. It's here for you. God is here for you. For everything that you know, are capable of, God provides, you know, the drive and the inspiration and that still voice within. And then that still voice within doesn't bring in that miracle in that moment that you need it, even though you pray all day long. So there's these expectations that are set by the stories that we're told about what God is, or what the, you know, what the big super ego structure is. And we're told stories about what nature is. And then we have a lived reality of struggle and oftentimes a feeling of alienation and being orphaned. And so when we enter this reading, you know, we're really connecting with the divine and saying, you know, what is the purpose of our spiritual walk? What is the purpose of our spiritual belief? Why are we even here? And that's sort of what I've been talking to my guides about, you know, talking about this notion of like, you know, if I want to see a future where there's a temple and there's ways of expressing divine love and divine wisdom and a community that is able to be supported by the community that is operating within this structure. And it's so much like a church, what I'm describing, except that it's the true utopian version of a church or a religious structure or a religious utility place. And there's never even ever been that, but the concept like should be there. So I've been talking a lot with the energy of my own personal Jesus. And my own personal Jesus goes back to my beginning, my origin story, where I came up to know what divinity was, who divinity was, and how divinity operated. Because I grew up between like these two bookends, one being my dad who and his family that are this Roman Catholic, very religious, and then on my mom's end, evangelical Christian, very religious, both at the extremes of fervor, without a doubt, the most religious people in the world. And for me, this was a war zone, obviously, but like further, you know, that you have to understand that I am a child that unsettled them both. Even when my mom was pregnant with me, there was like an eruption in the way that like my alchemy worked with their alchemy. I was a bomb that hit that family in terms of weirdness. And I say that to say that being brought into those, and let me just let my dog erupt if she's going to do that. Hold on 1 second. The era of me interrupting the channel so that my dog can bark has begun. But so I lost exactly where we are, but I'm kind of bringing myself back into this space and connecting with this energy again. So I'm telling you a little bit about my origin story to tell you what it means for me to connect to the energy that we're going to be channeling today. So being involved in like this psychic abilities, the senses, right? And then the ability to perceive at the level that I was able to perceive, and looking at the two different church structures and the spiritual energies that back those church structures, And it was confusing because the safest place in the world was simultaneously the church, and the most dangerous place in the world was simultaneously the church, in terms of like what it meant to be hypersensitive and able to pick up on all kinds of energies and be constantly interfacing with stuff. It was like, it was the sanctuary, but it was also the lion's den. And so there was one energy that I felt safe with. And that one energy that I felt safe with was the energy that I most returned to when I felt most orphaned, and when I felt most alienated, and when I had scared people. It's a horrible feeling, but it happened. And my parents, even, when the ancestors were like painful, to be around sometimes for me. There was one energy that was associated with those church structures that I could go to time and time and time again and find what I needed, and find that transformation and that hope and that renewal. But these encounters never operated like some sort of spectacular white lights and funny, it was a meeting with another soul who seemed just as troubled as I was. And so I would go to this place. I would go to this, what I thought was like a weird, hill with lots of trees on it and valleys. Like if I could describe, I would go to this desert place, and in this desert place there was just these certain kinds of trees and this certain kind of landscape. And I came later to discover what that was, but as a kid it was just these trees, and there was a guy sitting there, and that guy, I always kind of felt like that guy was a Jesus, and Jesus actually comes in a couple of forms. I mean, that's sort of a lot to explain, but it's also the truth. But there was a type of Jesus, a Jesus that I knew and would go to over and over again. That was my safe space. That was my comfortable space. That was the thing in the world that I trusted. And this energy was sitting on a short, dry tree, and the tree had a swooping kind of branch that was low enough that you could sit on it like a bench. And I used to always go up to this energy, and I would usually sob there. That was usually the place where I would go, and I would kind of cuddle up to this energy, and I would just sob, and I would sob, and I would sob, and I would sob. And I would lament, and I would lament, and I would lament. And this energy was just very subdued. It was very... it was Jesus, but this quiet Jesus. It was a Jesus that I used to have to like really try hard to get to speak, because it was just a presence of just like such concentration and such careful sort of love, but not like a talker the way that I'm a talker. And I had one God call my voice and my prayers a babbling brook. And so so it was interesting, because I would go and I would sob and I would lament, and this energy would just like sit there very quietly, very thoughtfully, very not stoic, but like concentrated, intense warmth, but also like seriousness. And that was what it would do. That was the whole purpose. I would go there, and I would have this release, and I would have this place to feel really safe, and then I would go do something else. And so that energy, come to find out later, and as I tell the story, I know the story, so it's a little bit like, but that energy, I come to find out later, like, because I was looking at something, it was either like a magazine or on a documentary somewhere, I actually saw the Garden of Gethsemane, Gethsemane. I saw it, they were saying, and this is the Garden of Gethsemane, and I was like, holy crap, those are the weird trees, like, that's the weird trees, that's the Jesus that was my own personal Jesus, was also the Jesus that was there. And in the story, he goes in there and he wants to talk to God and say, like, I don't want to, take this cup. I don't want to be crucified. No, thank you. Like, I'm just kidding. Like, nope, I don't want to do it. That's how the story goes. That's how the mythology goes, is that's the place where he went, and that he was comforted by an angel. Now, I hope that wasn't me, because I did no comforting. So I don't think of myself as necessarily an angel or a part of that story. But like, there is this way in which this particular Jesus is really important to this particular direction that we are exploring, because that is the Jesus who knows better than anyone the kind of God that you have to contend with when it comes to a spiritual walk and a spiritual practice. And so the Jesus of Gethsemane was the one that I knew and loved. And there were a lot of other Jesuses that I felt pretty ambivalent about. And if you think that there can't be more than one Jesus, then just look at all the denominations, the unconscious collective, the collective unconscious mind, the projections, and the archetypes that are the deities in the deity field, like all those things interacting. Jesus did stand out. This particular Jesus of Gethsemane, but only the Jesus of Gethsemane, only the Jesus of this park stood out to me as being like holding something like that I would go back to over and over and over again and say like, we good, this is good. This is what is real. But this is what is real was not like a father. It was not a king. It was not some high atop the thing. It was something else. It was some other substance. It was some substance of God that was uniquely powerful. And so that's kind of what we're going to talk about, what it means to commune with and work with and bring into the world with us in terms of what we're going to learn in this reading. So we're working with and channeling that Jesus of Gethsemane, he's not a big talker, but that's okay. So there's a lot of pausing and listening that will happen because of the way that this energy speaks. But with the orphan here, the King of Wands and the Nine of Wands. And now I have to pause and listen because this is an energy that demands that. That's sort of careful consideration. So if we look at the story of this particular Jesus, I think we have to first bring ourselves into, like, I'm seeing this energy saying, like, come into my space, come into my story, enter my story. That this energy saying, like, they can't stop the story's effectiveness, nor could they stop what it was that I set out to do in my lifetime. This energy saying, like, my lifetime, being the Jesus that I was, the version of the Christ that I am, is the one who suffered. After the death, once the transformation took place, what that turned into, how it was used for and against itself, that's a different that's a different configuration, transfiguration. That's a different transfiguration of the energy of a God. So that's the energy of a God. And when we talk about being the version of yourself that is infinite, that has already lived the life that you are living, and is the infinite, near perfected, if not perfected part of you, that God self, there's the God that resurrected and became a God and became a figure of Christendom, and that's a certain self. And in ascended form, it's a certain kind of God. But then there is the individual, the person who lived for, like, I'm listening, I have to stop and listen sometimes. Because his wisdom comes in certain kinds of, like, long breaths almost. He's funny. He's like, you do a lot of over explaining. I like his energy toward me. But this energy is saying, like, we're gonna come into this story not as God perfected in form, but as a man, the mystic, the seeker, the mentor. I'm just waiting because it's sounding like our Patreon for a second there, and I was like, wait, what are you talking about? The saint. So with this King of Wands and this Nine of Wands energy here, and this orphan, to be a mystic, and this God is saying, to be a mystic, and you have to understand what it is to be a mystic. To be a mystic, you have to start the journey in one way or another as the orphan. And it's a very special, very specific type of orphaning that you have to enter this journey with when you become the mystic, when you are meant for a certain kind of communication with the universe, to and from, like the communication to the universe with your life, and the experience of your life is in that alignment with that story of mystic, with that archetype of mystic. in order to do that, in order to achieve that, you start with the orphan as the archetype that has to seek a force of being beyond its immediate environment. Like the neglect it forces the communication beyond the mother, beyond the father, beyond the community that you're in. And so one way or another, there's an orphaning, an exile. One way or another, there is an inability to cross like the bridge in order to communicate and connect properly. The last will be first, speaks to this particular life that you have to live in order to have certain kinds of access. And that's not a hierarchical statement. It's just something about the acceptance of who you are and what you're meant for as a part of the universe's harmony. It's divine harmony. There's instruments. They play at different songs and different pitches as they come together to create a symphony. You're part of that. And there's no hierarchy there. But there is something to be said for the instrument of God that you are as this representative in this way. And so that Nine of Wands is, this is a hard battle. And that King of Wands speaks to a hard God. In one way or another, you know, and I talk to this energy so much from this position of like, I hate your father. And that's not like right, because this energy identifies as the father. And so whenever I say that, there's like this thing. But we are talking about a unique kind of a God. We have to look at these stories and the mythology, not like in a brave sort of way. One of these days we'll read Women Who Run with the Wolves together, but I suggest you read it anyway now or soon, because it's just like, it's like one of those ones that you should be listening to or reading. And those fairy tales, those actual myths, like those actual fairy tales are gruesome. Scripture has a gruesome kind of a quality to it. The realities and the harshnesses of life like have to be included in that mythology in order to correctly convey the divine message. And so when we look at Jesus's life, and that's what we're doing, we're looking, this is the only Jesus that I feel like we can do this kind of work with, because I respect this Jesus. Not that I disrespect the other Jesuses, but there's a special respect for this one. This Jesus and this Jesus relating to this Jesus as God was a very difficult relationship. What you have to understand about this Jesus, and we have to go all the way in, it's so important to do that, is that this Jesus was a member of the community of believers that was outside the sanctioned church. This was a going out into the desert with the Essenes, getting baptized, which was a pagan practice in those days. You know, that John the Baptist, that was pagan. Baptisms were only pagan. They were not a part of Judaism. I don't really know exactly. You guys have to do some of the research behind these channels readings, but like, I know that there's something there about that baptism being like against the rules of the religion that Jesus was born into, against the rules of the religion that Jesus was born into, was him preaching. Frankly, he didn't go through the rabbinical school, and he wasn't one of the the ones that were sanctioned for that job. He wasn't that family. In fact, he was considered the lowest caste in one way or another, or one of the lowest castes. And he was out there preaching without a certificate or a seminary degree or anything like that, and doing pagan things, you know what I mean? And speaking in ways that were against the rules and against all of the conventional thinking about the scripture of the day. And he was confounding them with his understanding, which came from another place. And so right off the bat, we have two different gods. Very clearly do we have two different gods. And I want to repeat this because this is important. The Jesus that I'm channeling through as that Jesus of Gethsemane is saying, like, look at the different gods being served here and being honored here. You have the same scripture that Jesus is quoting from and making meaning of are the Pharisees quoting from and making meaning of. And those Pharisees are serving a God that is distinctly not the one saying you should liberate and heal and care for the poor. And that is who you serve when you serve God. You serve God when you serve the orphan. You serve God when you serve the widow. You serve God when you serve those in need. You serve yourself when you serve these, rituals and taking all the money and hoarding and kowtowing to empire. The sanctioned belief system of that time was the empire's sanctioned belief system that the Pharisees were party to and part of, and Jesus was against that. And so right there we have a God that doesn't care about the rules, because Jesus is not an energy that cares about the rules. But it's not necessarily an easy God with this Nine of Wands. It's somehow the same God that the Pharisees serve, that Jesus is talking as like, this is my Father, but this is from the scripture, this is God. And yet it's not the same God. And so in the same way that my experience of churches was that it was the safest and the most dangerous place, they seem to be talking about two different gods. And like one God is wisdom and the other God is tyranny. And Jesus seemed subject to both. Fire. This channel is fire. So what Jesus was born to, and the community and the energy of this Jesus was born to, is the church that fails. What his experience of God was God existing in a church that fails. His experience of God is being the scapegoat that is crucified because apparently God has failed that child. We're talking about a very unique kind of God here when we talk about a God of the 40 days in the desert with the devil. Let's talk about that. Because it's really important for us to understand that when we endeavor to be mystics, when we endeavor to commune with the divine, what we're doing is having a very honest idea and a very honest sense of what these energies represent and how we're meant to work with them. And what they aren't and what life isn't is particularly accommodating. And there's something to learn from this. There's something to like listen to. And even I, Lisa Lee, am like, no. He's like, I will not believe it. You will not tell me that I cannot be accommodated. Like, this is the only thing that I insist. No, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Sometimes I just... Because this notion of I think one of the essential pieces to what it means to interact with this energy and what this energy is saying is this energy is identifying as God, right? In its infinite form, but it's identifying from the place of man. And when we talk about divinity and working with the gods, we're not talking about a loving kind of a force. We're talking about a force that is difficult. 40 days in the desert. Fiery climax approaches. And hold your vision. This notion of Jesus served a God that kept him in the desert for 40 days, hungry, freezing, lost. Jesus really wants to be clear about that part of the story. Is that part of what made that desert so terrifying was he lost his way. It's why he got to be hungry and why he got to be thirsty and why he got to be at a place of ultimate desperation. Complete and total annihilating 40 days of feeling like the God that I have been serving, the God that I believe in, the God that is my everything, has led me into the middle of a desert where I can't find my way so much that I'm hungry and thirsty and I may die in this desert. And the energy that is accompanying me is not that steadfast presence of peace. It is not that steadfast presence of all blooming love. That's the company that Jesus had in the desert for 40 days was the accuser. Nine of Wands gonna break you. You're gonna get broken. A fiery climax approaches. This King of Wands energy is the devil. That is going to be the tyrant. And the King of Wands can come in the warrior. The King of Wands can come as the advocate. But until the King of Wands has mastered the passions, the King of Wands is a tyrant, a controlling lunatic. And the Nine of Wands will break you. And so when we talk about who was the father of Jesus, that Jesus was like, my Father is me and I am my Father and we are one. That Jesus went to the Pharisees and was talking about the same God as they perceived in their language, in their scripture, using their divination tool of their scripture. But Jesus was so clearly not serving the God of litigation. Jesus was so clearly not serving the God of the written word. Because God said about their written word, Jesus said about their written word, what good is it if you can't heal on the Sabbath? The Sabbath is for you, idiot. It's not for God. Jesus was able to take that book and make a lot of sense of it. So much so that they were in awe of him, that he could channel through that divination tool and actually bring the wisdom of the divine, made him awe-inspiring, made their jaws drop. He was channeling the rule book that they waved around and held up as God. But he was not following it because he came and he dispelled the law. He made the law irrelevant to a certain extent. He made it a guidebook instead of a God. But that's what channeling does. But furthermore, but coming back to this notion of that Jesus was constantly operating with a God that wasn't loving every little hair on his head. It was a God that was challenging everything around him, and a lot of people hated him. A lot of people wanted to kill him. He was breaking laws where they should have been able to just take an arrow and take a sword and chop him in half. He was doing things that put his life at risk every single day, which is why that ultimate ask for the crucifixion wasn't so much it was already a bygone conclusion. He had already accepted that he was going to put channeling the divine energies of his Father into the world with what he was preaching. That was going to come first. And if you kill me, that's going to come second. But the God that this energy was serving with his very life on the line, freely given, was also a God that had him 40 days, like in a horrible, this was a bad month. This was a horrible month. This was the worst. Who does that to their child? I, for one, have a referendum the size of a city against what I consider a God that would make me uncomfortable for as long as I've had to deal with different kinds of discomfort. This is for me an unacceptable level of treatment to that which you love. But Jesus served this energy with everything. So we got to look at this mythology. We have to kind of pull in closer as we channel this energy, because this Eight of Coins and this Ace of Coins says this path is hard. This path is painful. This is an excruciating experience that does not often look like deliverance. Where do we see examples of Jesus having deliverance in the Bible? I'm serious. I want you to think about this. Those of you who grew up in, high control religions, and those of you who didn't, just do a mental scan. Where does Jesus in the Bible experience deliverance? And where does Jesus in the Bible experience salvation? After he dies, that doesn't count. Think of before he dies. Where is he having deliverance and salvation? For himself. He's freeing people. He's giving salvation. He's giving deliverance. But where is he actually getting it? Is his God giving it to him? Or is he bringing it into the world and standing there like exhausted? Because this other aspect of what it means to channel this energy of Jesus is this energy of Jesus is so tired. This energy of Jesus is just trying to take the rowboat and get to that hill and have a moment of freaking silence and just give an ounce of self-care. And what happens? Not even that. He can't even get a minute Is his God providing a minute for him? Is his God giving everybody a nap with a special sleepy breeze so that his first and love and perfect son can have a minute to just ponder and walk in a circle? A little bit of quiet in the breeze. Do we ever see that in the Bible? Or do we see this man exhausted, fighting for a quiet little hill, unable to actually achieve the goal of said relaxation, trying to just refuel out in the middle of the desert, lost completely, abandoned completely? Let's get a Bible card. But there's a reverence that I'm trying to bring in. There's an energy of reverence that we're going to bring in. Let's get a Bible card. So that Nine of Wands is talking about back breaking on your own. Doesn't seem like there is help for at least 40 days. Maybe a lot longer. Certainly it happened over and over again that Jesus was left fending for himself against forces of nature, forces of annoying people, forces of betraying friends, being misunderstood and suspected. Let's see what our little Bible verses are. And we've got, but by the grace of God I am what I am, and his grace toward me was not in vain. But I labored more abundantly than they all. Yet not I, but the grace of God, which was with me. This is 1 Corinthians 15:19. And this one is Proverbs 16:7-9. When a man's ways please the Lord, he makes even his enemies to be at peace with him. Better is a little with righteousness than vast revenues without justice. A man's heart plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps. Proverbs 16:7-9. So there's this provision that is built in with this relationship with this God that is an absolute and complete mystery that would make a man like Jesus, who is obviously empowered by that energy's power to channel through these incredible messages through the scripture available to him, through any scripture, I'm sure, that was able to perform miracles of healing, that was able to be the living representation of a God that delivers, saves, heals, feeds, and even resurrects. But in that 40 days in the desert, the companion that traveled with him was not his loving God. The companion that traveled with him was the accuser. But what Jesus says here in terms of grace is that even the devil was his friend. Because if God loves who you are, if the gods love who you are, then you will be accompanied by them and they will aid you. That strength will be there despite the fact. And we do know that this is true. We do know that when you go and you trace back to the worst, most nightmarish, most traumatizing moments, somewhere there is a grace. Somewhere grace finds its way. Grace is why you do not succumb. Grace is the reason you don't succumb. And sometimes it can feel like the grace is absent because the sound of the fear can be so high-pitched. The panic can be dialed all the way up. The body can react to it in such a frozen, desolate fortress. And so that's why this energy says the grace is not only there, but you have to sometimes push to access it. Sometimes you have to push yourself to say, I know that my God is good, in order for belief to be permission, for permission to believe, the placebo effect that allows you to participate in what it is to receive those transient energies of divine grace. Most of the time it's there. but sometimes you're lost in the middle of a desert. And sometimes you're looking over at a landscape that shows you that this is maybe not a God that operates in divine mercy unless we participate in what it means to bring that through. Why was Jesus a God among men? Because he picked a hard mission that nobody else was doing. No one else was saying, I'm going to bring through the energies of defiant truth and righteous healing. And I'm going to stand against the established everything. And I'm going to let people mock me. I'm going to let people throw stones at me. I'm going to let people fear me. I'm going to face death every time I open my mouth and say something against the empire. I'm going to confound the holy leaders who are then going to accuse me of being a Satanist 10 minutes after they agree with me. I'm going to be watched and judged. You know, like all of the things that come with his thing, his being an active, effective mystic in the world meant that he was going to make decisions that were going to confound people. He was going to eat with the tax collectors, and he was going to touch the lepers. He was going to do the unthinkable, and they were going to fear him, but he was going to do it anyway. He was going to be the representation of a God among men, and he was going to do it right, meaning he was going to heal, and he was going to give wisdom, and he was going to channel his Father, the true God in his experience, his personal God, into the world to bring that deliverance and that salvation. But there was nobody delivering and saving him except the grace. The presence of the grace was the deliverance. The presence of the grace was the salvation. The presence of the grace was God. And so when this is your path, yes, you know, it is a hard path that forces you into exile, that forces you into the margins, that forces you off that path where thousands walk, up a small path right alongside that cliff, onto that ledge, so that where you see out, the perspective that you have is a huge landscape, whereas everyone else down in the huge crowd that walks below in the widest path, their perspective is just the person's head who is in front of them. And if you're trying to communicate with the person who can only see one person in front of them, and you're all the way up there at the top, looking out on a landscape, it's going to be like an orphaning, you know, in some respects. But what you have to offer in terms of perspective, in terms of the ability to shout out and say, up ahead, there are lions, you know, like over to the right is a stream of water. What you have to offer community is tremendous. And so this is where being the mystic and being willing to actually be this representative is everything, you know, in a certain way. And it's also something that you have to reckon with the God of the world that you're in. And there's a lot to that here with the Three of Cups, the Page of Cups, the Queen of Swords. And so let's get a few cards. I'm going to turn my heater on. Hold on one second. So I was just kind of conversing with this energy, and I was saying, you know, that grace is really important. And I looked over at this. When a man's ways please the Lord's, he makes even his enemies to be at peace with him. And this energy took me into that desert, and like the accuser was like the nature of this accuser. And I think that we all have experiences of the accuser, like very heavily, like in our worst moments, when it's like most dire, you know, is also, and like most horrible is also the moment when the accuser comes in. And so the accusing energy is that actual, yeah, like it's the energy is the accuser. Like, so it's a substance, you know, but that energy in particular, like when held by a consciousness that is taunting you, is going to say stuff like, nobody loves you. Everyone forgets about you. You are just invisible. Don't even try, because they're just going to hurt you, and it's just going to be terrible. And why even have faith? Don't believe in anyone, because you obviously are going to get disappointed. You're always disappointed by people. People can't help but disappoint you. Everyone's so selfish. That's the accuser's voice. And the energy of the accuser, if like we have to really think about alchemy here, The energy of jealousy feels a certain way. The energy of pride and supremacy feels another way. And the energy of the accuser feels a certain kind of way. And it's that energy that, like, this is a deprogramming that needs to happen, because it's funny how, like, the church is simultaneously, like, the worst and the best. And it's not the best in any way right now, but, like, this notion of, like, sanctuary, you know, go into an old, beautiful temple. It's, like, the safest place, and yet it's also the most dangerous. Like, why is it? Monsters and not. But this, let me just get quiet again, because this energy makes me do that. This notion of that energy of the accuser coming at Jesus that entire time in the desert, saying, like, oh, you think your father loves you? Because it's a little cold out here at night, isn't it? Freezing and maybe gonna die. So, beloved, definitely. You know what I mean? Like, that's that taunting sort of energy. And think about, like, what Jesus is saying about grace and what he was showing me about the experience of the devil. I kept on seeing him freezing in the fucking desert, like freezing his nuts off in the desert, and the devil being like, I guess you're just so loved that your father can't even throw you a miraculous little cloak. You can't even get a little, you know, plasma warmth. You know, you can make a miracle. I saw that, but can you make a warm, fuzzy energy blanket? Doesn't look like you can. Guess you're not that powerful. Guess your God doesn't care about channeling warmth for you. You know what I mean? Like, this is the center. And he showed me, like, Jesus, like, just fucking, like, laughing at the absurdity of his God's ways and just being like, you're such a dick. And also, like, taunting the devil and being like, I seem to be the comfortable one and you seem to be the one who's so cold. And, like, this weird cajoling. And it was like, and there was a lot of laughter. That was a 40 days that were filled with a great deal of, like, hilarious, this is a bad friend, it's not the friend you want to hang out with, you know, like, but at the same time, like, whatever, this dude's funny, you're funny, and it is what it is, right? So this is like something that really is important for you to understand in terms of, like, the God that Jesus was with and the God that was with Jesus. Jesus is saying, like, that grace is the presence of God. And so when Jesus was laying there, you know, in the freezing desert and the devil was freezing and God was like, I'm actually comfortable because I'm hanging out with my Father who's making jokes with me about you trying to bother me when I'm, you know, like, able. But Jesus was like, but, you know, the problem with the temptation, and when you talk about all the temptation, Jesus was not out in the desert being tempted by, like, beautiful women or, you know what I mean, like, or a gorgeous man. Like, he wasn't out having that experience of the desert in terms of temptation. It wasn't temptation to, like, say curse words, you know. It was temptation to believe that this cold is unbearable and you're being forsaken and you're not loved and God doesn't care about you and there is no, you know, nurture in nature. It's a temptation to take in the energy of the accuser and bring it into the world with you. Because even if you're accusing yourself, you're hurting yourself. If you're accusing someone else, you're hurting them too, because you're always with partial information. And so how willing you are to entertain and bring the accuser into the world is like how willing you are to hang out with, like, that which is designed to take you down. It's like an operating program. And so it's to untangle yourself from the indoctrination around sin and death and sin and hell. Because hell is an experience that you have on a daily basis when you hang out with the accuser. Hell is an experience that you have when you hang out with any of the energies that separate you from the presence of that which is the substance of God. Being separated from the substance of God is hell. It is today, tomorrow, and then in the far, far future. Like, it is while you're alive and when you're not alive anymore. And so how we navigate around what it means to participate with the presence of God has a lot to do with being honest about what God is in order to get a accurate participation. And what God is not is, you know, God is the presence of the grace. The presence of God can sort of do anything to make your enemies your friends. It can do anything to, let's see what this says again. But by the grace of God, I am what I am. And his grace toward me was not in vain, but I labored more abundantly than they all. Yet not I, but the grace of God, which was with me. And so there's a way in which God does deliver and bring salvation through presence, the presence of with you. Not you don't have to be there. It's the presence of with you, not you don't have to be there. The nature of God is not removing Jesus from the court of public opinion that is like, kill him, he's the devil. He's like, I just healed your eyes, you fucking bastards. You know what I mean? Like, this is a bad experience. And so we have to maybe sit with this notion of like the experience of life has to be one way or another, when the hold your vision is about the relationship you have with the presence of God within you in any situation, and cultivating that relationship within you in any situation. And that presence is not a loud presence. It is not a haughty presence. It is not a boastful presence. It's not the accuser presence. It's not the despair energy. It can be with you in despair. But this energy's presence is meant to, like, it is meant to lift you up. And so this toiling, this pulling yourself out of the snares of all of the devils, and being on your path with holding your vision and holding that vision and holding that energy of the substance of God, you have a path. That's your path. You're on this path for a reason. You decided to be the mystic. Okay, you've been an orphan. That sounds harsh, doesn't it? It sounds kind of like you want to rescind whatever the offer was, and you're dialing up the, who among us has not, been like, I'm going to just dial the front office. Clearly there's a loophole, but there's this way in which you have a path, and your path is blessed, and the presence of God on that path with you is a blessed position, and you are meant to receive that presence. However you need to name it, whatever the container for your faith that will hold is, the presence of God remains steadfast in times of trouble, such that you are alleviated by the grace therein. And sometimes you're tempted to hang out with the accusation parade, and sometimes you're tempted to escape life, in one way or another, or just get bothered in ways that doesn't acknowledge the presence of God and what's going on with you, or where you are and the journey that you're on. With that Three of Cups, that Page of Cups, and this Queen of Swords, you're meant to have your nurture and you're meant to be served in community. Goddess serves through community and connection. The goddess is the connection. She is what connects. And if you are connecting, you are with her. If you are disconnected, you are working towards connecting to her. And you're connected to your body, and your body is connected to the vast array of energies. And in that orphan position, your body is seeking that connection in the divine and in the other dimensions, and learning the body and the other dimensions. Everything is a process. All the dimensions are a process. All the alchemy between dimensions are a process. And everything should be done in reverence to the substance of God in love. And when it's not, it's going to trip you up. It's going to hurt you. It's going to hurt others. That's the stuff that we need to learn, and we need to be responsible about bringing into the experience of being a mystic and operating as a mystic in the world. We don't have an organized religion, but we do need to take some of that technology and use it right, because this is conversation, just basically jumping in. Jesus' conversations this week were talking about how I can't hate the Christians. It's like, which, like, I don't want to hate them, but like you talk to them sometimes and it's like, they're so easy to hate. But yeah, Jesus is like a forgiveness anywhere my name is used, like, right, I'm there. And like, there is a lot that, like, there's a partnership to be had with the old and the new. And I was kind of getting the lowdown on the right way and the wrong way to go about building something, and having a bridge that builds that something is creating a partnership between the old and the new instead of a animosity. And creating within that partnership of the old and the new a kind of like love story or something, like, and I'm not like, it's just interesting that I can't really get it like perfectly right how it's explained, but it's a relationship with community, what is being created anew, and what was before, and structures and new structures and structures within the structures, archetypes, all kinds of stuff like that. But where we see this notion of like community, and where we need to talk about community, is right now, at this time, in this place, every one of us needs a certain thing. And I'm going to tell you what that certain thing is, and everybody's going to agree with me because everybody knows that this is true. Nobody feels any other way. Like humanity, we're in pretty much accordance, except for the people who fear the divine feminine aspect of God. People need a building, some kind of a erected structure, maybe even make it with rocks. It doesn't matter. You need a space. And it's a space where you can go to commune safely with people holding the substance of God, holding the holy energy. The holy energy is peace. I see the divine in you. You see the divine in me. We want to experience divine intimacy that is not about sex, but maybe can be. I don't know. Like all of the things that people, when they come to a group and they're safe and it's holy and there's serving God and goddess and being in community and holding space for vulnerability, holding space for confession, holding space for art and ritual and dance, holding space for channeling and learning together and bringing wisdom from all different places and communicating with it and having all of these things. We just need a building, and it needs to be safe. And it needs to be about that which is holy, that which is true, that which gives everything an equal value and love and light and participates in all of these magical, amazing things that if a church wasn't evil, if a temple wasn't evil, and it could be a school, and it could be a place of creating and trading, and there's no fear, and there's no evil opportunistic, but that's like perfect utopian, like we need the building and the place to be, and then within it, all of these like little hive-like structures of giving and receiving. We need a church, but the church is co-opted by these evil factions. But like Jesus, when he talks about like the kingdom of heaven is on earth, is talking about that sort of agreement, that we create these spaces, we create these kingdoms. And so I just got lost. I have to stop and listen because I was just seeing that vision and I was thinking to myself, like, that is it. And it's not safe, and it has never been safe really for us. The spirituality and all of the repression and all of the fear and the way that humans mix like all of these things together has made it hard. But that's why we have to come, like, and I'm getting lost in the channel, so I have to just take a pause and bring myself back. So Jesus was really serving kind of a tough guy, you know, in some ways, when we think about the this notion of an impotent God and evolution and compassion. This notion of an impotent God. In order for God to have arms and legs and reach physically and have skin on, we have to be in community with each other. We have to be in connection with each other. For that to be safe, we all have to be as safe as little children with each other. With this Page of Cups and this Three of Cups, community should be a place where we are all as safe, and like we live in an unsafe world where no, it's not even children are safe, but like a place where little children are safe, that we are as safe as the little children, as cared for as the little children, as much concern for us as the little children. Everyone equally loved and appreciated and valued and having their place and being seen and understood, because there's communication that facilitates that. There's infrastructures that makes their most actualized self be possible. So lacking that, we have this Queen of Swords, dark mother, like dark community, like masculine, terrorized, co-opted spaces, these places of indoctrination. When community, and is not Christ sort of energy of community, or Sophia or energy of community, we have Mary Magdalene energy of community, and it's not those things. It's got this vampire teeth. It's a succubus, it's an incubus, it's a vampire. It's sucking the lifeblood out of the community instead of nurturing it. And so this is kind of where we have like the forces of good and evil, and what we have to do in order to combat it with this universal compassion and this evolution is like this connection to grace, this connection to being the representatives of divine energies on the earth. it's very much this universal spirituality, this guardian angel, and this law of karma. It's an interesting lineup. But this law of karma really speaks to a system of justice. And I always think of justice as being an unfinished process. And I think that in terms of evolution, it must be. It's an evolving. But a system of justice, karma, very specifically karma, which makes some sense, it takes the vengeance and the need for vengeance and the need for you to drive vengeance and bring vengeance into the world with you and operate through vengeance, which necessitates operating through fear when others are operating through vengeance. When we're able to retract the claws of vengeance because we understand that there's a karma at place, that we're able to subjugate ourselves to a greater wisdom, a greater program, this is where faith gets faithy. And this is where God becomes a substance and a concept that to participate in, you have to relinquish your sense of control over nature. You have to relinquish your sense of control over nature. And that angel, that guardian angel, is the grace of God. And that universal spirituality is stepping into something else, this universal compassion and this evolution towards each other that enables us to be as safe in community as little children. And that also means provided for in community as little children. That is not impossible, and that is not unnatural, and that is not wrong for every person to be provided for. Because we have the capacity as a human race to do so, therefore, to do anything less is a crime against humanity. Those who are against humanity, by definition, are Antichrist. And so this universal spirituality talks of a unity, and this universal compassion speaks to a compassion that comes in and says, if that person has nowhere to sleep, then nobody should have a place to sleep. There are no conditions on certain provisions. Of course, that is a community that nurtures the growth of every single sentient being within it. This actually extends to nature. And of course, we can do this. It's a choice. And so that guardian angel, that substance of the divine, that grace, that presence of God, being with the presence of God, being open to the presence of God, being able to bring the presence of a spirituality, of a deliverance, of a salvation, that is not about if you do this, you're going to get a reward. If you give your life to God, God is going to provide for you. In the moment of need, God will arrive. No, not necessarily. Look at the life of Jesus. Let's come back to the notion of an impotent God. God cannot reach somebody tangibly with a material aid without a human being willing to take God's command and God's energy to do so into the world, which is why the hypocrisy by which we live at this time is so glaring as such, to make God be absolutely impotent. You can make God impotent. Impotent. It's a phrase. Wow. That's pretty heavy, actually. And I think that that's where we have to come in with this notion of universal spirituality and this notion of choice and this understanding of energies and alchemies and what it means to receive. And I'm using Christian terminology, the Holy Spirit, the Holy of Holies within you. What does it mean to contain that Holy of Holies within you? What does it mean to understand and identify with a Holy of Holies rather than identify with a world that accuses you and accuses others? And how do you dispel those accusations and come into an evolution with universal compassion? With this Knight of Coins, this Two of Cups, the Six of Wands, and the King here, I want to get some more information. These are the ugly decks. I don't mean ugly. No decks are like really ugly, but there's decks that I associate with like black, where I'm like, ugh. And it's the Illuminati deck, and it's this other Victorian era deck. I have my biases, But they're also useful. You know what I mean? They're kind of like those shadow decks that when we take them out, we mean business, you know, in this particular room somewhere. So we have to step into this universal compassion. If we don't learn how to forgive and have compassion, it's game over. And there is no guarantee that God can be where we don't open ourselves up to that energy and participate with that energy. Like, this is this weird way in which, like, the kingdom of heaven is within. It means you bring it in. You open the door and you bring it in. Otherwise, we don't get the kingdom of heaven. And so when we have that kind of understanding of what it is to be Christ in this world, what it is to participate with Gethsemane, is to say, I don't care what it looks like. I'm going to do this other thing, and I'm going to change the alchemy of this space by defiantly connecting with grace. Connecting with grace. It starts there. It doesn't start with some exaggerated action. It starts with you start with connecting with grace. I mean, it's not like you can't do something else, but that's advisable. So with Back from the Dead and loopholes, I love that. And the bang collapse here with the king. The king is dead. The empire has fallen. Let's see what other cards we have with this. So there's victory, but it has to do with holding your vision. With the Ten of Swords, it's about holding your vision. And I think that this is the training of a mystic. And I think the reason why it's the training of the mystic, the reason why it's so important that if you actually truly want to walk the path of a mystic, that you do this, is you have to be able to hold the vision, hold the presence of God, the substance of Goddess. You have to hold that anywhere you are, with any scene in front of you. No matter what the voyage that you're on is, no matter what the journey that you find yourself, no matter what role you are either cast in or you cast forth as, you hold that presence and you've done it. You've done it correctly. You've achieved the goal. You have mastered the species. You have evolved. You have entered the arena of evolution towards like godlike stature. Like, that is how you follow God, is you bring that substance in with you no matter where you are. You hold it. You're going to hold something in those moments in life that come and go and come and go. You're going to hold some substance of awareness and consciousness and growth and being. You're going to participate with some energies. And this is a co-creative process, which means that you're not meant to try and hold something all at once, always the safe spot. That's a place of terror. You want to be in a place of empowerment that says, like, I can stand here in this Ten of Swords situation with the grace and the presence of God and make my enemies laugh with me while I laugh with them. And that yoke is light. And that does seem impossible, but it's the one thing that's not impossible. It's the one thing that is not trying to control nature and be a god over nature. One of the biggest beefs that God has with me, at least this God has with me, or the Jesus's God has with me, which is also simultaneously the thing that we're having to work our way through in this time period, is that I get a lot like, you're not God, don't try to be God. I'm trying to like help, like, Lisa Lee, and I'm going to just bring my own self and story and like my energy. Like, I know this God, and we even have contentious stuff, but like it will be my will, you know what I mean? As Lisa Lee, like, I will see a poor little hit by a car like deer, and I will think like, I have to go and rescue this animal. Somebody has to like intervene. Like, I need to call down the heavenlies. I need the forces of nature. I'm like sobbing, like somehow the universe has to comply, and this animal needs a veterinarian. Like, immediately somebody hit this animal by a car. But I have like a bicycle, right? And I'm like, and there's no cell phone assistance. And like, to me, like, this is why there, like, I look at the situation and I say there is no God, and I have to resuscitate this animal myself. I have to find a way. I have to, pour energy into this. And this is the wrong thing to do. It's the wrong approach. So it's like this really interesting thing about like trying to like make nature answer to a standard of God that God will not answer to. And like, it seems so cruel, right? But I think this like Queen of Swords thing that we have to contend with is that to hold the substance of God in the Ten of Swords moment is to defy it, to defy the power that it has over us, to defy the power that it has over us in front of other people, so that when others join in defying the power of it together, its power decreases until it has no power over any of us, because we stand together in the substance of God, which has no rival when it's held in community, when it's agreed upon. And that's why we hold our vision, because it's not really about a perfect story. It's about a perfect way of participating with the story that we're in. And with this bank collapse in the King, this is talking about the structures, whether it's the structures outside of us in the government, or it's the structures within us with sickness, or, with some kind of catastrophic thing that happens, job loss, separations, alienations, this collapse of life stuff that we need, this collapse of things that we rely on to take care of us. This is where it gets really tricky. It's like, we're offered life, but we're not offered ease. And I hate the way that sounds, because it's actually like, it reminds me of like Ayn Rand or something like that, like some kind of like heartless, like, capitalism. And I think that the King here represents a problem with a merciless system. And I think that community is done in consensus. And because community is done in consensus, and the power of God to reach into the world and participate at a boots on the ground level requires receiving that substance, bringing that substance into the world in consensus, that it has to be consensus for this to be what is dominion over the world. That something has to have a dominion in terms of the ordering of chaos. But that chaos is not served by control. Chaos is not served by tyranny. Chaos is not going to conform to violence. Chaos is not going to come under the control of indoctrination. Chaos is by consent changed into consensus about how it loves to be. Like this is an interesting vision that I'm getting, because it does have a relational, like, unity aspect to it. It's like having another person in your life, or having another thing in your life. Everything that you bring into your life organizes your life a little bit more around its presence. So our lives become like paths that we walk on, that are organized by the encounters that we have with the things that we do and the people that we see, and the things that we participate with. All of these little roads, are created that divine our path and our destiny. And that just took my breath away, so I have to like stop and like lean back and listen again. We're participating in such a mass tapestry of like what it is that we're creating into this world, and that we're creating into our own creation, that we're creating into our experience. So that community, that consensus, the rise of the divine feminine aspect of God, it comes from like bringing the energy and the substance, family room and the courthouse, like, into some kind of coherence. The structures are failing, that Ten of Swords, and this distant horizon says like, where we are and where we need to be. It is very much like just looking out onto the world and seeing that like we have no parents, and being like, the house is on fire, the parents are drunk, and some of them are missing. You know what I mean? And like everything that we have in the way of a rule book is coming up short because there's an alarm going off, and like none of us know how to like drive the vehicles, and like maybe we need the boat, but like where are the keys? And somebody has to find them, but like nobody's in charge, right? So like this is this feeling. This is the presence of a lot of chaos with this Ten of Swords moment. Like the family room and the courthouse, you know, these are two things that you don't govern a community like a corporation because it's a family affair. Like humanity is a family. Humanity in all aspects is a family. And so we have to let that courthouse, that doctrine, that like Pharisees, the basically what Jesus came in to take out with his presence when he stepped into the world as something that was not governed by it. And that's this bank collapse. It's kind of like a collapse of the systems. And the collapse of the systems, that Ten of Swords, like when we look around at a God that doesn't provide for its citizens, when we look around at a God that doesn't heal, and a God that does not provide health care, there is no God that heals in the world. A God that does not provide sustenance and shelter, there is no God if there's no one that does that. And the church historically was supposed to be that role. That was its purpose, was to be community, to be that last stop where you go when you need mending, where it is safe and you are as safe as a child is safe. And so this is a journey that we're kind of on. Like, you know, when we realize that this Ten of Swords is kind of happening around us, it's also a liberation with that Two of Cups and the Six of Wands. It's a victory because this Queen of Swords energy of suck your life out and evacuate everything that you are for its guilty, weird pleasure. To detach from that is to actually, like, it's a strange vision that I'm getting, but it's almost like you get your sustenance from the energy that you are participating with, and the sustenance of the divine aspect of self, the sustenance of the divine aspect of God, that substance of goddess. When you participate with the grace, which is that presence, that's really all that you're called to do in the way of walking as a divine messenger, because that is channeling, that is bringing the divine in with you, through you, as an example of, and that example of is in defiance of those that would tell you that you are nothing, of those that would be in the space of the accuser, in the space of the cannibal. And so that's what the hold your vision about. You know, there's a gem here in this thicket, and with the loopholes and the back from the dead, like this is the resurrection story. And I want to just get some little versy cards and see what we got. So, you know, hanging out with this Jesus is saying that like your God is going to let you get crucified. Sorry. And like that's like we can all just like be aghast and be like, that's why we're not Christians, because like that's ridiculous. Like why would we? It's like, be like, not all the way. Like I'm not you know. I had this conversation with this energy a very long time ago. Like I was very adamant with this energy in that card, like in that space when I would go and like cry and sob and I, you know, have my limit. And I would be like, absolutely the fuck not. I mean, and that's an interesting thing. Like when you consider that, like, I didn't realize that that was the time and the place that he was like going for comfort and to go to God and be like, let me like, I don't want this cup. You know, I don't want this cup. And I'm there like saying, no, the fuck he doesn't. I'm like the accuser in that like place a lot more than I am like an angel. Cause I remember being in that, like how many times I sat with this energy and was like, you know what? Absolutely not. Like this is like this scapegoat shit is just ridiculous. Like this doesn't even make communal sense. Like this is against the reasoning of a higher reasoning. Let's just like save them all. You know what I mean? It's like a very crazy like this. Yeah. So that whole narrative, that's interesting. Maybe that's why there's this like hating of witches. Like that's an interesting thought. Like I just had a flicker of insight separate from the channel, but I'm going to return to the channel because I think that's me like giving up my thoughts. Okay. So give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His love endures forever. Let the redeemed of the Lord tell their story. Those he redeemed from the hand of the foe, those he gathered from the lands, from east and west, from north and south. Psalm 107. So this is the salvation thing. And this is interesting because I think that that's like the greater argument that I was making in that particular place, was this notion of like the bringer of salvation. One of the hardest things you could have to go through in life is to be the change you want to see in this world. There's a little quote somewhere, like, be the change that you want to see in this world. That is by far the hardest shit there is out there. Hands down, 100%. You can bet your bottom dollar. Nothing's harder than that. And that this is such a beautiful psalm. And I think that we have to always be cool with using all forms of divination. Like anything that has a divine like intention behind it is intended to break through divine information. But to give thanks to that which is good, you know, to know that the divine substance of God, that is the grace of God that you hold when you hold it in your life, endures forever. No matter what 10 of swords situation you are in, you can be in that place with divinity. And I know from my own personal experience that this is true, even though I can say that there has been pain sufficient to almost eclipse that. Like that does exist as well. But the presence of God does seem to be always what manages to pull through. However stormy the situation gets, like it is there. And I mean, I think I can speak to even like incidents where like terror, like actual terror is present. So too is the presence of God. And that's like, you know, I can just attest to that, you know, and I think that others can attest to that. And I think that that's tricky because it means that two things are present. Terror is present, and so is God, and those two things are both present. It doesn't last forever, you know, but the presence of God does. That's what endures. The terror is for a moment, for a time, for an hour, sometimes for a month, a year, or a decade. Sometimes it becomes like a low refrigerator hum in the background that you always have to shoo away like an incessant fly. There's a lot of things that we have to relate to in the form of this existence. And the easiest part is tapping into that substance of God, tapping into that substance of Goddess, tapping into that substance of good. And it's not enough to just have it. It's this really speaks to this notion of like, why is Christianity worth saving? And this is something that I said, this is my whole thing with this God, you know, hanging out with this God and being like, this is my week of being like, I was saying a lot of like, I hate them, you know, and it would be like, and I'd have my whole, like, I'd do like all these reasons why like they are so mean and like, how can you like look at this scripture and say that? Like, what kind of animal picks that interpretation of like, who's like, whoa, barbaric, you know what I mean? Like on and on and on and on and on. And this God is like, no, you need to choose forgiveness, like no matter what, no matter how like horrible or deplorable you think something is, you have to be able to take a position of what are you holding right now? What substance are you participating in? How are you bringing this universal compassion to the evolution of all of humanity? Because everybody has to go by consensus. We do not bring the kingdom of heaven on earth. We don't get the kingdom of heaven on earth without a consensus. That is the trade-off. That is the evolution. That is the moment of enlightenment and ascension. You're not leaving anyone behind. That's what Jesus was talking about. That's what he said. It's not really about proving the presence of God is some good, delightful, emergently like lovely thing. It's not about that. It's not about getting a superpower that makes you heal like a magician so that like, I mean, it's about carrying the substance of God, which means that you heal as God sees fit. Like, you know, it's a participating in the substance of God is having a relationship to nature that allows for confounding things to exist in the same place that sanctuary and participation and community and that presence of God and the arms of God to reach and the inspiration and innovation of God's influence and inspiration, like everything that is what animates us as a whole and what takes care of us as a whole in harmony. This is a partnership. This is a unity. This is a universal compassion that is simultaneously evolution. And so when we give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, his love endures forever. Let the redeemed of the Lord tell their story. Those he redeemed from the hand of the foe, those he gathered from the lands, from east and west, from north and south. It means he's gathering. God, she is gathering. They're gathering those of us that are just out here needing to be taken from the distant horizon, from the middle of a thicket with enemies on all freaking sides, with this 10 of Swords song blaring in the atmosphere. We need something to bring us back from the dead. And there has to be some kind of a loophole in the way of divinity that says we can call down like the graces of the cosmos and get like a leg up. Let's get some assistance. What do we have here? This one is like, these cards, somebody like printed them in a way that it's hard to read. Okay, so I'm going to read this one too. Let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess, for he who promised is faithful. And let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing. Not giving up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing. Gosh, that speaks to this time, doesn't it? Divination can come through anything. It has to. And I think that like what Jesus said when he was like, you have to, we're not like Christians, you gotta stop being an accuser and bring them in on the good stuff, and this, having a space that people can come and share belief is really important. Having access, everyone should have access to church spaces. Not by like bullying, opinions and like positions and all that crap that goes into these people who are like, we agree on these tenets and we disagree on those tenets and you're out and we're in. That's stupid, right? That's not smart at all. No, the way that we have to, but there are some organizing principles that ensure that like what you love in life, you'll find others that you love in life. And so that there's like certain kinds of natural organizing principles about, being able to spur each other towards good deeds, like not giving up meeting together as some are in habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more you see the day approaching. Like spaces of communal encouragement where people understand that everyone benefits when everyone benefits, that the potential inherent in every single sentient being for the whole is beneficial. And the loss of that potential is a loss for all. This sort of thinking, which is not impractical, it can be proven in a loophole for the court of law. And I don't mean that the court of law as we know it is a court. Like that's ridiculous. No, what I'm saying is that none of this is too hard for us if in consensus. If we can come to some community standards in consensus and call that the law and agree that that works for everyone, that's a pretty good declaration of independence in the making worldwide. This kind of participation and this kind of enthusiasm and this kind of holding the substance of God in community, creating a consensus about why it's good, why we do good deeds, why we are come together and encourage each other, why that encouraging and that healing and that participating in each other's success is our success and is the success of what it means to create the kingdom of heaven on earth, not by waiting for something to come down from wherever, because that's a false doctrine, but by bringing something within, through, and into the world through our participation and expression of that substance, of that which is holy, that which is true, that which is good, that which is love, that which is universal compassion, that which is an eager willingness to participate in each other's evolution and the evolution of the earth as a whole and all of her species. This is not out there. It is doable. And so where we have this Knight of Coins, this is a journey. We are on this journey. We are going towards coherence. We are moving towards consensus. We are taking on these values and these views around what a community standard even is. And with that Two of Cups energy, we are community and communing. And this is rocky and difficult. And I think that we have a breakdown of the rules and the roles that kept those rules. And without them, we're all lost at sea. And there is communication that has to happen with each other, but we come with a shared belief. And shared belief is a far more critical currency than I realized it was. And I was talking to this energy a lot, and I was like, yep, container for our faith that we create on our own so that we can never, ever, 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 ever be persuaded ever again that somebody could control us. This is, so we don't have exact beliefs that we agree, we have all aversion, that was my that was what I was saying with this energy about me thinking about faith and mysticism and building community with structures. And I was staunchly along this whole thing of being and everybody can do everything that they want with their own colors and their own crayons, and we don't care because everything expression is so lovely. This is how we do. This is my vision that I'm expressing to this energy. And this energy is shared belief is such an important currency. You need shared belief in order to have that coherence, and that consensus is part of the arrangement and part of the unity. And that's part of bringing the old into the new. That's the marrying of the two. It's cannot be, in this energy's estimation, a divorce as we have previously hoped, because it's too precarious. It's too annihilating to have this kind of fissure in our soul space. In order to go from one end of the archetypal shadow into that ascension end of kingdom of heaven on earth, we first have to be in consensus about everybody gets in. Nobody's left behind. We don't have a left behind structure. We don't have a that species can go extinct. Whatever, those people and their lineage, that's oceanfront land. That kind of annihilating is not acceptable. That's below community standards. That's not in coherence. That's unholy. That's evil. This is how we begin to create these things. Because a need to bring the old, which is what's the shared belief, into the new, which is expression, is communication with divine energies. And Jesus, where are you going with that? He's showing me the new is so different. The new is open to change. The new is confounding consciousness, expanding experiences. But there's something here about loopholes and back from the dead. We need to communicate. We need to proceed forward in Two of Cups in community for that Six of Wands victory to come of this collapse. And so with the verse we have here, oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, for his mercy endures forever, and say, save us, O God, of our salvation, gather us together and deliver us from the Gentiles, to give thanks to your holy name, triumphed in your praise. So we, with symbolic language, this is where the Bible and me have to do a rewrite. But not that I'm allowed to do that, but everybody can have a creative co-create. You can always play, right? But this notion of Jesus is you're so good. This notion of deliverance, I think, is central to divining this information correctly from this divination tool. The words that are divine here are salvation and deliverance, and holy and praise and good and forever. And so when we're able to define like the truth of like what it is to bring the substance of God in with this universal compassion and this evolution, it provides us a loophole into the future where we can resurrect from the place that we find ourselves with this 10 of Swords. And that goes for your personal life too. That's not just global. How you get back from the dead is to apply that universal compassion. You have to be able to forgive and communicate across that divide. And that is not about agreeing on ideologies. That's something else. That's a community standard by which we regard each other in love, despite all differences. We put love first. And we just, this is how like the kingdom of heaven on earth, this gem is born, like, and able to like overcome that thicket. How do we get back from that? How do we make a turn from the place that we're in with the 10 of Swords, bottom of the deck energy? There needs to be these aspects of salvation and deliverance that are brought into the world, maybe with us. And no one can do it individually. I don't care how magical and sage-like you are. I, for one, will not take that cup. I'm not going to take the cup of being able to like heal immediately on command. And because for the sole reason that everyone needs how to learn, we all need to learn how to heal ourselves. Every single one of us, every single person has to take that medallion, has to take that substance of God into the world with them. There is no place for a hierarchy where one person can heal and everybody else has to wait on 7 hours of lines, and that energy can't even go and rest on a hill. You think about the story of Jesus. He was like tired. He was looking for like to go on the water and just like pray, and like people were following him, annoying him, and like, did God provide for him a respite? No, he was like mad and annoyed. That's a bad system. And so when we think about how the community responding to like divine energies, the way the community responds to divine energies is to participate. No matter what the story is, it's a story of participation in the quality and the quantity and the act of holding divine holy energies, bringing them into the world, even in defiance of that which accuses you of being too much this or too much that, or not allowed here and that way, and not allowed there, and they don't like you and they do, and why and how come. And we got to step back from those voices of the accuser and step into a relationship with the divine energies that inspire love, that inspire acceptance, that inspire feeling nourished. And there's competing energies that are competing for your attention at all times. There are energies screaming for your attention right now that are going to quadruple and multiply in the future, and you're going to lose yourself in all the static and noise unless you get clear on that temple within, on that relationship with divine energies around and within you that will nourish and inspire your becoming instead of dilute you and demand from you, extorting your life force. Understand that the divine feminine aspect of God in light attribute archetypally is that which gives from a fountain of never ending, never running out. Like it's a source of life that is just inherent to who she is and how she naturally expresses. And she gives naturally of herself. It comes naturally. In the divine aspect that is in shadow, that archetypal aspect of its opposite, its evil side, you have a vampiric energy. The system that we are in within community structure, the machine that we are in right now, is vampiric. It is sucking the life out of community. It is draining every drop. And we have to participate in life. We have to participate in that energy of the divine feminine aspect of community that is nourished. And we do that by having that grace, by acts of mysticism and miracle that brings that grace, that presence of God into every 10 of Swords moment as we move into a future where we hold the vision, where we hold her energy, where we hold that holiness, where we hold that regard for each other, where we uphold those community standards, where we have a shared belief about our value and the value of other sentient beings. where we are all as safe as little children in community, or should be safe as children are supposed to be. And that victory is ours with this consensus. And so it's like, yes, it's so far off, we can't do it, oh my God. But Jesus is saying, like, I came with the prototype. The prototype is like nothing else matters. The prototype is you are eternal, and so you can speed up this whole experience by being in communion with the divine at every moment and receiving that grace and receiving that influence and receiving that presence, because you can receive that presence at any moment through anything. If you set your fire, I'm saying if you like, and there's my speech wobbled, if you, like, you can feel that presence. Jesus was a revolutionary. This Jesus was actually, like, yes, he was a revolutionary. Yes, this Jesus was a revolutionary. Jesus is going to be the first one to say, like, no vengeance allowed. There's this energy of Jesus being like, with this back from the dead. Like, we have to think about what you do with your sense of your infinite, immortal self being. That's a crucial aspect. We have here, don't you know that you yourselves are God's temple and that God's Spirit dwells in your midst? If anyone destroys God's temple, God will destroy that person. For God's temple is sacred, and you together are that temple. So this is violence, right? So I was thinking about this a lot, because this is one of these things where I'm so mad at God. Like, this is my biggest rage. I'm going to read this. Do not marvel, my brethren, if the world hates you. We know that we have passed from death to life because we love the brethren. He who does not love his brother abides in death. This is it. I think this is Jesus's message. This is the message of a revolutionary. This is the message of a revolutionary. If you're going to hold up signs that proclaim the Lord upon this earth, that proclaim the God of all gods upon this earth, then you need to be holding up a sign that said, do not marvel, my brethren, if the world hates you. We know that we have passed from death to life because we love the brethren. He who does not love his brother abides in death. He who does not love humanity, does not love every sentient being as he loves, she loves, they love themselves, does not love at all, does not abide in love, does not participate with love. You can bring love along with hate, but it's no longer love when hate enters it. It's not itself anymore. It ceases. You cannot mix certain things alchemically without creating a bomb, a force of destruction. The message of Jesus is a revolutionary message, and it is a revolutionary, and revolutionary energies are not in a crowd only able to see the person in front of them. Shared belief is really important, because the resurrection is kind of a concept in a certain kind of a way. Or it doesn't need to be more than a concept. You don't need it to be believed in the way that you believe it in order for it to be effective. When you think about what a resurrection actually is and what Jesus was trying to convey, it wasn't about the rewards of... Let me get this right, because I have to listen for this to be exactly where it needs to be. I have to get kind of in tune. The kind of vibe that I have with this energy is like, I feel like the bratty kind of like, like the bratty sister sort of energy. I think that when you commune with this Jesus, it's a Jesus that is so frustrated and so tired of like why, the kingdom of heaven on earth has to wait. Why we have to wait for this revelation, why we have to wait for the resurrection. Like, it's like Jesus is like, when I'm being shown like this notion of like, when you think about what I was doing and what it felt like, there's never some point in this story where I had to know the impact I would have. Like, there was no necessity for me in that knowledge to be fully present and to be fully honoring that which is true, that which is holy, that which is right, that which is your journey with the divine energy that you bring into the world by actually spending time, by participating, by seeking, by finding, by cherishing. This is a holy practice that says, I want to be with that which is holy, that which is true, that which is good, in the form that it takes to show me myself. This grandmother ocean, this primordial Yamala, this intimacy with the divine. This is a choice of participation. It's a choice of consciousness. It's a choice of non-local reality and dimensions, and choosing to go to the dimension and and be held by this energy of you are loved, you are cherished, you are nourished. That is the truth. That is the reality that prevails. That is the grace that you know in knowing yourself. That you are cherished, your sins are forgiven. That is the good news. The accuser is just wrong. You can release that. You can be released from that. This energy says, like, I know that you're hungry. I know that you need air. I know that you need to breathe. I know that the strain is great, and that it seems like there is no God. That is no excuse to give up on God. And the only thing that God, the goddess, require of you is the belief, the permission. Belief is permission. The placebo effect works on the axis of a belief that is so true, so purely true to this person who says, this is what I'm doing, this is the truth of what is going on, this is what I am participating in, this is who I am, this is the experience I'm having. I don't care what the ingredients are. I'm determining what is going to come of it by my belief in that which is true, that which is holy, that which is mine to receive. You are the artist that paints the room that you are in. In every conversation that you have, you paint all around it a reality that you participate in, and you get to be the creator of that symphony and that harmony should you participate in looking away from the accusations and looking into a presence of grace and love that sees everything in harmony and can show you what that feels like by participating with it in any situation. The soundtrack of that movie changes the experience. And so this energy invites you to participate in faith that has nothing to do with the rewards, outcome specific of some sort of social exchange based on a rule book that leads your spirituality in circles to nowhere. This is not a game of gains based on a quality of life assigned to it. And God is not participating at a level of individual success. God is participating at a level of communal success that you either join or separate from. There's an effort here. I don't like this. This is nice energy. This is a nice energy. I want to close with this deck here. I like this energy a lot, and I encourage you to feel into what it's like to begin to heal some of the rift in terms of what it means to relate to this energy, because there is a giant wound in all of us with this energy's name on it. I don't even care if you are like devout, there is a wound with this energy's name on it called like sacrifice that you have to make just to, you know, feel like you're deserving of any kind of love. There is an exchange inherent in the very sinner's prayer that you utter so constantly. Unconditional love is something else. It's not, I think people misunderstand it. Let's get, actually, can I ask about that? Let's do a little unconditional love. No. Okay. Well, I think we're just gonna use this particular deck for that. Let's see what we're gonna do. Okay, there's a mystery afoot. In every one of our lives, there is a great mystery afoot, whether it is what is tomorrow going to bring? Am I going to make it through this week, this month, this year? Like, is somebody going to come along in that way or that other way? Am I going to get this or that in the way of opportunity? Are people going to respond? Like, there's so much mystery that we have to contend with. There's so much that we cannot control. There's so much nature that no matter what we try to do, we can't control it. And it is nature that is baffling and overwhelming. And it's either the nature of man or the nature of storms and weather. But we are being beaten to and fro in a storm right now. And so each day brings something new. And there are new ways to try and anticipate and try to prepare for. And we're being told that peace is going to have to come from a place of this, no matter what it looks like with that Ten of Swords, it's going to have to come from that place within where we tap into this primordial divine energy that is within all of us, that is attached in one way or another to some story or another that gets us there. It's that place that resonates. And for me, it's a specific, this energy of God at this particular time and place, like, it makes that kind of sense to me. And we all have some level of that, but the trust is such an essential component right now. That divine energy of trust in God is really not about, am I going to get saved at this moment in this way? It's the saving is here. It's that saving grace is here. That grace is here. And if you don't have that grace, then you say, give me grace. You say, can I have the grace? I need the grace. Give me the grace. Wait for the grace. Anticipate the grace. Participate in the grace. By belief is permission. I believe that grace is with me. Because the universe is for you. The accuser is going to say that it's not. You have a choice one way or another. You can participate in one kind of relationship or another. Because you're going to participate on some level. At some level, you're going to be doing the participating, and that participating is what you choose to host and give life to within yourself and bring into the world with yourself and your creativity and your wisdom, and what you choose to remove your life force from. And the universe has your back in these decisions, and if you don't know, in communion with this energy, you will either feel a yes or a no. That's in an intuition, and that's a relationship with your intuition that extends beyond just yourself. It extends into a place that says, do I feel the peace of this presence? Then your intuition, it's not that you can't trust your intuition. Your intuition is telling you something. When you think about what your intuition is telling you and you have that peace backing it, you can say, yes, that is resonant. That is resonating. That is what resonating means. And that's a relationship, and that's knowing what that peace, knowing what that energy feels like, and returning to that energy. Because spirit has your back, this energy has your back, this energy is with you, this energy is the kingdom of heaven on earth. And the kingdom of heaven on earth can move mountains within you, through you, around you. It is just like, this is the design, is this receptive kind of a thing with that. I thought there was a law of attraction. Yeah, it's right here. The law of attraction and the law of life. And so nothing is wasted is forgiving people, forgiving systems, forgiving this place. You don't have to participate with it. You remove your participation, but you have to understand it's vampiric. So how can you stop feeding it? And then from that place of not feeding it, developing a relationship with the sustenance that grace can provide you and grace will provide you. And I think that the message that Jesus has more than anything is that there will be grace, but that grace is a tricky thing too, because grace does not deprive you the experience. With the law of attraction and the law of life, you know, for everything that you can attract to yourself, there is the law of life, which is there is change. Change is a constant. Change is a form of God, an aspect of God that cannot be negotiated away. Change is going to happen no matter what you do, no matter who you are, no matter how hard you try, no matter how much you achieve. Change is going to be there. And so to chase, to attract, to attract, holding, attracting, you know, like there has to be this relationship with this universal truth in the law of attraction and the law of life that is a way of falling in love with the nature of life and trusting that mystery and trusting that process of allowing there to be things that are outside of your control, and that relationship to the divine being about participating in that lack of control or that control, but participating with the divine presence of God with you. That divine presence with you. That is where you get your strength. That is where you get your truth. Make your dreams real. Active participation is required. And that participation is with this, like with divinity. How do we know this? It's just intentionality. You know, all that active participation is intentionality. I intend to sit quietly and connect with the energy of the divine that is represented in this myth or this story or that story. And think about what that intentionality is bringing in for you. Why are you connecting with this energy? Is it for vengeance? Then you're going to experience vengeance. Is it to overcome fear? Then you're going to be overcoming fear. Is it to break free of liminal spaces? Then you're going to be breaking free of liminal spaces. Is it just to communicate with the presence of love? That's a nicer route. Sometimes you need that. You need to be refueling. Because when you bring the presence of love into every inquiry, then the response that you get is loving. Because that's an energy of the law of attraction that you want to be participating with it. Anything that's like outcome specific along the lines of like certain goals for quality of life as status based is going to be spinning your wheels, always trying to hold on to something that doesn't have that magnetic relationship that will stay with you, because there's no sustenance from those things. That's why they're just taking your life force instead of giving it. And so with this law of attraction and this law of life, you know, a relationship with life that you are in love with, and this notion of making your dreams come true and making your dreams real starts with having dreams that are at home with who you are. You know, be at home. Make your dreams real and be at home, and nothing is wasted. Speaks to like the life that you're in. Begin craving the life that you have. Begin wanting the life that you've been given. Because anytime that you get pulled into comparison, anytime that you get pulled out of the story that you signed up to serve a mission of soul retrieval through, because that's what this time and this place is. That's what this particular troop of mystics is doing in the world. We are here to participate in that resurrection, in that back from the dead, which means that we have to go through the Ten of Swords transition with everybody else. And ours is going to be harder than anybody else's too, because that orphan, this particular archetype, is a 9 of Wands, warrior, angel, business. The warriors, the angels of their inheritances, of their peoples, of their entire human race, the angels of these here people are with us on this journey. And we believe in this magic in ourselves as part of that presence on this earth. And we believe in that journey as worthy. It's a worthy transgression. We're here to participate in holiness together at a time when beacons and lighthouses are most needed. We make our dreams real by participating in the life that we're in as if nothing is wasted, as if every moment is a moment to appreciate with the presence of grace, with the presence of God, in belief, in permission, in open curiosity, in hope, with an alchemy of readiness that says, I just need you. That's it. And I don't have another thing. Please be present with me. Let me know what that feels like. Let me feel that grace. And you sit and you believe for it, and it is accepted by way of that belief. And from that place, you find your way home. And from that home, you begin to make your dreams real. You begin to have the kind of life that is a law of attracting life, experiences of life. And to do so, you have to accept that change is a part of this, and that the mystery of what's going to happen if things change is a part of Spirit has your back. Trust. Like, this is a good journey. Even if it feels so Ten of Swords right now. And when we think about the story of this great mystic, this Jesus of Gethsemane, think about the one that said, I want to give up on this mission. I didn't sign up for this crap. Maybe I did, but I'm just kidding. Let's do something else. This is the Jesus that did not want to do this, did not want to have this experience, was right there with you and being tired of it and being exhausted and sweating blood because the anxiety was so ridiculously bad. That's not trust. Do you think that feels like trust? Do you think that feels like I'm trusting my great Father who gives me endless grace? No, the presence of that grace isn't necessarily a guarantee, because its permission is belief-based. And I guess that's an important thing that we have to kind of just pause and talk about before we sign off, which is, and this might be like something that we pick up in the next round, but let's just get a card here that speaks to that. We don't leave anyone behind. We don't leave anyone out. Those that have ears to hear, hear. Those that advocate for supremacy are Antichrist. The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous run to it and are safe. The rich man's wealth is his strong city, and liken a high wall is his own esteem. This is a particularly hard one to get right now. But I think that, like, this is, let's see what this other one is and see what they go together. Rejoice always, pray without ceasing, and everything give thanks, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you. You know, it's really funny because, like, I had these arguments with this energy all week where I was like, you know what, you're what these guys are doing with you, like what they've done with your whole, like, did you see what they've done with it? Have you seen like, that's like, I really, like, as I think back on like my role with this energy, like, I'm definitely like always holding that accusation at this energy. But I think that there's this thing here about wealth and how the empire built this religion. I mean, this is so much a religion that is like a noble lie, like the Platonic sort of noble lie. Like, that's so much what we're looking at, and it's such a, like, if you're using a divination tool, no matter how the beauty of this, like, whole notion of scripture and everyone's hands, like the beauty of even this notion of divination, which is like an interactive prayer in everyone's hand, like, if it's done with the right intention, if it's done with the right thought process, you know, it just becomes a tool of communication where if you are in the right resonance, if you're participating with the right aspect of God in terms of what you're bringing into the world, you're going to bring in wisdom, you're going to bring in righteousness, you're going to bring in truth, because that's what you're holding and that's what you're, like, participating with. Now, it doesn't mean that every time you cast a net that's beautiful, you're going to catch beautiful things. That's from the OA, that quote. But it does mean that what you participate with is part of what you bring through. It's what you bring into the world with you. And so when we think about this notion of wealth and tower and hierarchy, we're thinking about this like intentionality of those that were crafting a divination tool that they wanted to use for control of the masses. It's not the words that we're fighting against. In the same way that we have to disqualify this tyranny of this rule book and the words, we also have to disqualify that we're not fighting with court documents and each has a better argument than the last one. That can go on forever. We can legalistically lose our minds back and forth and back and forth. We have to look at things symbolically and bring the divine wisdom through and say, like, what are the words here that are symbolic? Righteousness, tower, strong city, wealth. But where we have a high wall, it's in his own esteem. That's a boundary. That's an esteem. That's a high standard. And this is speaking about a name. It's speaking about a title. It's speaking about something that is supposed to cover the righteous. Yeah, this is a hard, this is like the name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous run to it and are safe. Let me just check in with Jesus, because he always like sits back and like listens, and like then he starts I channel, and then he always will like sit back again to just let me like ring out on something. And it's not a great way. But this notion of he's like, you fear wealth like you fear excess. Like, you have to stop and stop fighting with this notion of like luxury. You just have to stop fighting with this notion of like stupidity and thinking about things wrong. Because we have a problem. He's like, when it comes to building this bridge between the old and the new, when it comes to trying to dismantle a toxic capitalism without like crumbling an infrastructure that can otherwise be a beautiful provisional process. Jesus is coming in very strong to say, like, to rebuild, you have to be able to like relate. And you have to be able to relate to a notion of wealth that is for you. You have to be able to relate to a tower that you can safely be within and trust that you're safe under that umbrella of organization. Like, there has to be a way in which you can manage the structure and like rebuild into it a new form. And so we have to do something about this notion of authority and do something about this notion of serving something that is like coherent beyond maybe our understanding. And that's tricky, and we're gonna have to work on that. But rejoice always, pray without ceasing, in everything give thanks, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you. That's just talking about like, what are you channeling through? Praise is authentic expression, and it's authentic communication. And so this is challenging, but I think that that's the nature of anything with this energy. But at the same time, I think that a lot of what we got tonight was really beautiful and really true, and I can resonate with. I felt the difference. I can always feel in resonance or out of resonance with something that's kind of coming through. And there's a lot that I definitely do understand. It's a strength position, but I think we're here for it. So that was really beautiful, and I'm wishing all of you a beautiful Sunday and sending you my best. And I think we're on to a really fun start with wherever this particular your own personal Jesus kind of a story is going. And so with that, I'm going to leave that and sending you the best.